What's going on, family? Back on here with the Juke, man. Today we'll be discussing how somehow the Giants had one of the worst off seasons in the NFL. That's crazy to me, but we'll talk about that in a second, man. Subscribe down below. Road to 1K is still active, man. We're almost there. If you're new to this channel, man, subscribe. Join the family and help me get to 1K, man. Like the video. Comment down below your thoughts on the video, and let's dive straight into it. So one of the beat writers for ESPN, Barnwell, dropped a full list listing every single team and ranking them where they did on this offseason. This is post-draft, post-free agency, after all acquisitions, after making some moves, releasing players, signing players, all that type of good stuff, man. He dropped one for the whole NFL, and the Giants were ranked near the bottom of the list. And what he says is pretty intriguing, and we're going to dive into his quotes. Barnwell says, "The organization appears to have bought into its own hype. An unexpected trip to the postseason and a road victory once they got there was a pleasant surprise for the Giants, who had been treating 2023 as a year to get their salary cap right and begin a rebuild. The underlying performance wasn't quite as impressive. They were outscored on the season and finished 21st in DVOA. They went 8-4-1 in games decided by 8 or fewer points and were lucky to draw an even worse playoff opponent in the Vikings." So the Giants bought into their own hype. If this is any other team, what hype are we talking about that they bought into their own hype and didn't improve that much in the offseason? Or in my opinion, I think we definitely improved a whole lot in the offseason. We'll dive into that shortly, but buying into his own hype, any team that makes the playoffs in a year that it's a rebuild, they're going to buy into the hype, whatever that hype is. They were rebuilding, had one of the worst rosters in the NFL, one of the worst rosters in the NFC, and were able to squeak out some games and make the playoffs. So buying into their own hype is the same way that they had confidence in their players, confidence in their coaches that they'll coach them to excellence and be able to take us past that next step that we already surpassed in the first season. Brian Daboll and the coaching staff did a great job with this team, and it's clear that, with a lack of talent, you give them a little more talent, they might be able to get a little more results. And who's to say why we shouldn't think that we can make the playoffs again? Yes, we did have a schedule that was a lot easier last year than this year. One thing that this team showed is that they're resilient, and no matter who they play, they're going to give it their all and make it a close game. So who's to think that the Giants won't be able to do that this upcoming season? Even with, an unexpected playoff debut last season for the Giants. Daniel Jones balled out. Saquon Barkley balled out. A lot of key players balled out in their respective roles, and nobody really expected this much out of the Giants anyways. But somehow they're buying into their own hype. But if there were another team, this wouldn't even be a topic of conversation because it's all about building onto the next building block and trying to get better the next year. This is another piece from his article. They franchise tagged Saquon Barkley and committed to Jones, signing the same player who wasn't worth a fifth-year option 12 months earlier to a 4-year, $160 million deal with $81 million guaranteed over the first 2 seasons. They brought back Slayton and Shepard. They seem to be on the way out. While those weren't major deals, the move for Jones certainly was just that. So, not a surprise. Everyone's going to clown the Daniel Jones signing. Certain people in this fan base love the signing. Certain people in this fan base don't love the signing. They don't think we should have signed Daniel Jones. They thought he didn't deserve a chance to be on this roster this upcoming season, and he didn't prove enough, especially get paid that much, right? So, Barnwell is saying, instead of committing a lot of money to a running back, they committed a lot of money to their quarterback, and that's a problem. When all across the landscape of the NFL, people know not to give a running back the bag. A lot of people know that now. A lot of people aren't doing that. You see the same thing going on with Austin Eckler. You see the same thing going on with Josh Jacobs. You see it around the league. So yes, the Giants and the Saquon Barkley situation is not a great situation, but you see it all across the league. But all of a sudden, Saquon Barkley getting franchise tagged is a negative because Daniel Jones got his money and Saquon Barkley didn't. There's going to be a lot of people on this fan base, a lot of people in the comments maybe that would have preferred to pay Saquon Barkley over Daniel Jones. I love Saquon Barkley. He's my favorite player on this team. But when it comes to the future of this franchise, it's obvious you want to pay your franchise quarterback over a franchise running back. That's just what it comes down to. Daniel Jones did what he was supposed to do. In a year that his fifth-year option did get declined, he was right about that. We did decline his fifth-year option. But he came out and he proved his coaching staff wrong. With his third coaching staff in his tenure, Daniel Jones was able to prove to these guys that, hey, I'm worth the contract. Bring me back for another year. And he did exactly that. Made the playoffs and won a playoff game for the first time in a while. And they shouldn't have paid their quarterback and should have paid the running back instead. It's just crazy to me. They're acting like we lost Saquon Barkley. We franchise tagged him. He will be back playing for us this year. Whether it is under contract or that franchise tag, he'll be back. So it's crazy that he even brings this up. And of course, throw in Shepard, throw in Slayton. Slayton wasn't a big contract. Shepard wasn't a big contract. I don't even know why it's really brought up. And the last piece I got here. Jones ranked 6th in total QBR last season, so I won't be arguing that he played poorly. In terms of Jones' development, though, Coach Brian Daboll squeezed just about everything out of him. The 2019 first-rounder threw the shortest average pass of any quarterback, which dropped his interception rate to an unsustainable low mark, 1.1%. I'm going to be honest, this is straight up hating. I'm going to be real. Yes, he threw out a lot of stats. He threw out a lot of numbers, right? So let's look at his interception rate. He dropped it to a 1.1%, which is unsustainably low. Daniel Jones will never be able to do that again. Daniel Jones, outside of his first season, hasn't thrown that many interceptions to begin with. Yes, you can throw out the touchdown numbers. He hasn't thrown that many touchdowns either. But his interceptions hasn't been an issue realistically since year one. It was more of the timely interceptions. These past couple seasons, besides last season, he had interceptions that were just brutal in the red zone. But the number themselves weren't that high. A lot of quarterbacks around the league throw for a lot more interceptions than Daniel Jones did. Let's say Brian Daboll squeezed everything out of Daniel Jones that they could possible. They squeezed everything out of Daniel Jones while throwing to Richie James, Isaiah Hodgins, David Sills. These are the guys that he was working with last season. Lawrence Cager, who was from someone else's practice squad. These are the guys that he was throwing to last season. And yet, somehow, someway, Daboll squeezed out every little piece out of Jones. He can't get better with a little more talent around him. It's crazy, man. It's just when you play for the Giants and you play for New York, and you know the fun thing to do is to pick on Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones shouldn't have been drafted that high, should have never got that money. It's crazy to think that any other quarterback, if you surround him with more talent, he could play a lot better. Daniel Jones, that's not up for debate with him. You can put all the talent you want around him when he never had it, and all of a sudden Daniel Jones is not going to be that good of a quarterback. So this offseason, Joe Schoen was able to go trade for Darren Waller, go add Bobby Okereke because our linebacker core was trash, sign Paris Campbell, who was one of the top free agent wide receivers in this class. I'm not going to say he was a true number one, but he was one of the lone free agent wide receivers that was going to be able to come in and help a team. And listen, he signed with the Giants. Draft somebody that was mocked to us in the first round in John Michael Smith, drafted him in the second round. Drafted a wide receiver that was mocked to us in the first round as well, Jalen Hyatt, in the third round. Drafted Deonte Banks in the first round, helping this young corner group out with Adoree Jackson on one side and now Deonte Banks. Joe Schoen went in with a plan, and I think he executed on every single mark that he wanted to. He added a lot of wide receivers to the wide receiver room to get a lot more competition in there and see who can flourish. He added a linebacker, he added a cornerback, he added a center. What more did you want from him in terms to make a bad offseason? How much we bought into the hype that we didn't. He's acting like we didn't sign anybody to improve this team. Joe Schoen had a plan. He flipped the third round pick into Darren Waller, and all of a sudden now Darren Waller is outside of the top 10 for tight ends too. I'll talk about that in another video, man, but it's just crazy what happens when you play for the New York Giants, and when you're a fan of the New York Giants, all of a sudden any player that goes to the New York Giants is just not good anymore. I know Kenny Golladay, that was one thing that happened, but outside of that, man, this gotta stop. You guys let me know what y'all think in the comments, man. Comment down below your thoughts on it. Subscribe down below. Also, Road to OK is still active, man. Like the video. If you haven't seen my other ones, I got more videos to the left right here, man. I will catch y'all on the next one. Peace. What's going on, family? Back on here with the Juke, man. And calling all the Daniel Jones haters. Pull up to this video. Watch this video real quick. The New York Yankees lose the series. We get swept back in the third quarter. The third quarter was really when we started to make our moves. Then DeMar, banger.
Make sure you subscribe to the Juke.